And here we go. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. So NFL free agency is well underway, the legal tampering period is open, deals already being announced. You're probably wondering, this is a little bit late, this video. Unfortunately, I had a bit of a cock up and somehow managed to lose the two files that I spent quite a while recording and editing yesterday. So had to rush back from work to try and re-record these. So instead of doing the slightly more in-depth version that I initially recorded, I will just kind of list off my targets, guys that, you know, are my targets and were my targets, because as I said, already gotten deals announced. I've got the NFL Live free agency tracker in front of me just in case any more get announced whilst recording. But I'll, you know, try and get through it as quickly as I can. So that I do apologise, obviously, my cock up, my mistake. But regardless, just wanted to get this out, you know, even still, in despite of that. I did manage to get my quarterback one out. Didn't lose that file somehow, so that is up. Pretty much drained all my mobile data, uploading that this morning on YouTube whilst at work. So thankfully got that one out, but as I said, these ones gonna have to be a little bit more rushed. Some of these guys might have been signed by the time you've seen this, but I wanted to get it out anyway. So let's jump straight into it. Start with offense. Running back, you know, I've spoken all off season about the Browns need to revamp their run game. They've not been able to run the ball for 2 years now. If they are going to return to a more West Coast scheme, you know, that they've run previously under Kevin Stefanski, they need to fix the run game. No point relying on play action when you can't sell the run. I might be in the minority here, but I do believe Stefanski can operate a good run game. The proof is in the pudding. He's already done it. You know, the Browns just haven't really had the personnel in the running back or offensive line rooms the last few years because of injuries and bad play and etc. So rebuild this room, and, you know, I do believe that the Browns can return to being one of the better rushing attacks in the NFL. They currently have just Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong on the roster at running back heading into next year. So I expect them to, you know, sign and draft at least 3 running backs. It starts with bringing in a starter, whether that's through the draft or free agency. The age of Nick Chubb, you know, leading this run game is over, and they need a new guy to take that load. Then it's about filling out the rest of that room with some rotational guys as well. Whilst I would personally look to add a starter in the draft, someone like Amarian Hampton or Caleb Johnson that I've spoke about quite a few times on my channel already, the Browns can't bank on that happening. So, you know, if they were to look to bring in a guy who could potentially fill a starter role, for me there was 3 guys that I think they would have targeted. One of them has already been signed. Aaron Jones, pardon me, sorry, my throat is terrible. Aaron Jones re-signed with the Vikings, 2 years, 20 something, I think 20 million was it? So decent bit of money for him. The other 2 guys who are yet to be signed as of recording, J.K. Dobbins and Javonte Williams. I think both guys could come in. I don't think it would cost you that much. I mean, J.K. Dobbins would probably be the cheaper option. I still think teams are slightly concerned with the injury history, even after his breakout year last year. Javonte Williams, I don't think either guy would cost more than 6-7 million. You could bring him in, maybe, you know, potentially fill that starter role if you don't go that route in the draft. So they're the 2 guys that I would list, you know, for that role, but I think they will probably look to target that more in the draft. I think they'll probably go more rotational guys in free agency. And those guys for me, first and foremost, is Nick Chubb. I would like to bring Nick Chubb back, you know, to be a rotational piece in this running back next year. As I said, I don't think he's going to be the Nick Chubb of old and is going to have over 200 carries and over 1,000 yards. But I do think he can still contribute. So he'd be number 1 on my list. A.J. Dillon as well. Khalil Herbert, Raheem Mostert and Alexander Mattison are other guys that I would look for and target as rotational running backs. And then more kind of depth guys. I did have Elijah Mitchell, but just seen that he's been signed by the Chiefs. Ty Johnson, Saman J.P. Ryan, Cam Akers, and Kene Nguanu. So that's the running backs. They're the guys that I would target. As I said, couple of starters maybe potentially that could fill that role, but I think it's more rotational and depth pieces for the Browns. And if they were to bring in a fullback, for me, I think there's only really one option out there in free agency, Michael Burton. Not really interested in Rico Dowell. I think a bit of a one-season wonder. And of course, not interested in Najee Harris because, 2 yards of carrying former Steeler? No, I'm not interested. But moving on to wide receivers, the guys on the roster going into next year, Judy, Tillman, Bell, Thrash and Woods. All of those receivers, apart from Judy, have a combined 106 receptions between them. Partly why I haven't really spoken too much about wide receivers in terms of the draft, because whilst I expect them to draft at least one, they always do. They need some more experience in that room for me. I think the Browns could look to add a starter level player at receiver, as well as a couple of rotational and depth pieces. I have full faith in Jerry Jeudy as the Browns wide receiver 1, but thankfully, because they signed him early, he's only making $17 million a year, which is pennies on the dollar for a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. So because of this, the Browns could theoretically add a starter level wide receiver in the range of $20 million, which is what they did, of course, with Amari Cooper on the roster last year. That's what he was making. I think any deal like this would only be a max 2-year deal, and they could instead look to sign a couple of 8 to 10 million guys maybe instead. We'll see. But as I said, they've got to add some experience to this room regardless. Guys that I think could be those starter level guys for me. Chris Godwin has re-signed with Tampa, so he is off the list. Keenan Allen, someone I would definitely be interested to bring in here. I don't think it would cost you too much. You'd only have to do it on a 1-year deal, maybe 2 years just to convince him over another team, but I still think you could bring him in on a 1-year deal. Let's say, anywhere between 16 to 18 million. So that's the 2 free agent starters for me. But then there is also a wild card of Brandon Ayuk. There has been some rumours the last couple of days. Brandon Ayuk for Greg Newsome in a 4th. We'll see. Rotational guys at wide receiver for me. Elijah Moore, I would look to bring him back depending on the price. If you can get him for under, let's say, 7 million, 6 million, I would definitely look to bring Elijah Moore back to this team. Tyler Boyd is another guy. Tyler Lockett, I think, would be a good get for this team as a rotational piece. He's getting on a bit in age, but as I said, they need experience in there. That leads me to another guy as well, thinking experience. Darius Slayton has been in the league now a while, is a vet at this point, someone that I think could provide experience in that room. Nick Westbrook-Akine as maybe a potential deep threat rotational option, 9 touchdowns last year. And I think a wildcard option maybe, Amari Cooper, depending on what his market is like. Maybe there's a route for him to come back there. And then depth pieces at wide receiver for me. Braxton Berrios has signed with the Texans. DJ Chark, not ready to let it go. I wanted him at the Browns a few years ago. Why not make it happen a few years later? Mecole Hardman, Dante Pettis, DeAndre Carter, Noah Brown, KJ Osborne, Rondale Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, Corvette, Tyler Johnson, David Moore, Ashton Doolin and James Prochet. So quite a lot of depth pieces there, potential options for the Browns. And then 2 guys I'm not interested in, Stephon Diggs and Mike Williams, just for what they're going to end up costing, and I think they will get. I'm not interested at all, to be honest. Moving on to tight end, this is an interesting one because I think they address their need for bodies in the tight end room with a rookie and a veteran minimum contract. Njoku, Blake Whiteheart, Brendan Bates and Trey McKitty are rostered for next year, but I don't expect Bates or McKitty to make the actual 53, maybe not even make the practice squad. And Whiteheart probably does end up on the practice squad, so they could be looking to add 2 tight ends to be on the actual 53. As I said, I think they'd probably sign a backup as a veteran minimum and draft a guy as well. But they need bodies in that room regardless. Potential starters out there, I don't have any, I'll be honest. They've got Njoku. There's no guy out there that they would bring in as a potential starter level player. Not even so much that, maybe if there was an option to challenge Njoku or maybe split some of them snaps, I would have brought him up. But with this year's crop, there's no guys for me. Rotational guys though, Mo Ali Cox I think could be an interesting one. Jawan Johnson, or bringing back Jordan Aikens, as I mentioned in my Browns free agent video. I think that would be something they could look to do if they looked for a more pass catching option at tight end. And then some depth guys for me at tight end: Irv Smith Jr., Tanner Hudson, a reunion with Farrah Brown maybe, John Bates, Luke Farrell, and maybe Hayden Hurst. I could maybe be persuaded into that as a depth option. Moving on to offensive line. I've spoken all off-season ad nauseum about the Browns need to revamp this offensive line room. It's quite hard to do that in free agency. That can be quite expensive. So it's probably going to be more a combination of, rotational depth guys in free agency with a couple of rookies, a couple of swings at rookies, maybe even as high as the second round on a tackle, let's say. But there are some potential starter options if that is their route for just a quick kind of fix for next year maybe, and then draft a guy to hopefully be the long-term option. At tackle, for me, potential starter options: Cam Robinson, Tyron Smith. I know he's old, but as I said, as a 1 year kind of stopgap, I think you could do worse. And same kind of applies with Cornelius Lucas. Quite a tongue twister, that one. And then rotational guys at tackle for me: Joseph Noteboom. Did have Jalen Moore, but he about 30 minutes ago signed with the Chiefs for 2 years and 30 million, by the way, which 15 million a year for a guy that I was thinking about as a rotational guy. Maybe I was a little bit off on his market there, but fair play to him. Kelvin Beachum, Trent Brown, maybe, Josh Jones and Larry Borum. And then depth guys at tackle for me. I mean, most of the Browns free agents, to be honest: Jaron Christian, Jermaine Ifedi, Hakeem Adeniji, James Hudson. I'd look to bring maybe one or two of those guys back. When you're thinking depth, they've got familiarity with the team, so I would be interested in those guys. And then Chris Hubbard, Jackson Barton, and then this is a tough one. I'm not even going to try the first name, but Okorofor. Do with that what you will. You probably don't even know who I'm talking about. Offensive guard. Potential starters, I could maybe see them moving on from a Wyatt Teller, so if that was the case: Patrick McCarry, Tevin Jenkins, Aaron Banks, or Robert Jones. I doubt they probably go that route, so it's probably more rotational / depth guys. Rotational for me, I said it in the Browns free agent videos: Michael Dunn. I would look to bring him back, just the versatility on that offensive line. Of course, they've still got Zach Zinter on the roster as well. Hopefully he can return from his injury that he had last year. And then depth: Isaiah Wynn, Ben Cleveland, and it's not just because of the last name, Jake Hansen and Quinn Bailey are the kind of depth pieces I would look at for offensive guard. Centre, they obviously have Ethan Positz and Luke Weipler still on the roster. Luke Weipler obviously coming off of his injury. If they're confident in him, this might not be something they need to look to add. But if they do, potential starters, if they were to move on for Ethan Positz. I did have Drew Dalman, but he's just signed with the Bears. And then Josh Myers as well, but I highly doubt they replace Ethan Positz. Rotational guys, I don't really have any. You're not rotating your centre, let's be honest. And then depth pieces: Nick Harris, I mentioned again in the Browns free agent videos. I'd look to bring him back. I think the fact that he's evolved into a hybrid centre / fullback might help him as well. You know how much Kevin Stefanski loves running those heavy personnel, so I think there's a role in there for Nick Harris. Kendrick Green, for me as well, someone that started his career quite well actually, but fell off a cliff. Could be an upside signing. And then Corey Levin as well. Moving on to defense, Edge, they tend to spend a decent amount of money on that second guy next to Miles the last few years. Maybe they don't, because they might draft an Abdul Carter. But even if that was your plan, I'd still do it anyway. I'd get a starter level guy in there if you can. For me, those guys would be Chase Young. His career's not gone the way that people thought it would be, but the upside is there. If you could get him at, let's say 10 million a year, I think that could be a good option. So Darius Smith, who was released by the Lions, I would be happy to welcome him back. And Matthew Judon as well, getting on a bit with age. Didn't go that great last year with the Falcons, but I still think there's some upside that you can squeeze out of Judon before the end of his career. Rotational guys at edge for me, I've got Derek Barnett and Dayo Odeyingbedo. And then depth pieces, I've got Carl Lawson, Tyus Bowser, not Tyus Bauer, I always get that wrong. K'Lavon Chaisson, Patrick Jones, and Peyton Turner. Defensive tackle, you can maybe argue that this is not that big of a need. They've still got Dalvin Tomlinson on the roster. You look at the good rookie year that we got from Michael Hall, but the injury that he suffered, who knows? I do think they will add a defensive tackle, and I do think they will add a starter level defensive tackle even despite of that. For me, 3 guys to target in that starter range: Draymond Jones, Javon Hargrave, 2 guys that the Browns are interested in 2023. Is that 2 years ago now? I think they probably reignite that interest with both guys, look to bring one of them, into this team. And then Jonathan Allen, as maybe someone as well. He was released by the Commanders, still, a really good defensive tackle in the NFL. So they're the 3 guys I'd look at, as I said, as potential starter guys. Rotational guys: Calais Campbell, even at nearly 40, still able to be a key contributor on a defense. I think he had 5 sacks last year. I would definitely bring him in as a rotational piece. Great locker room presence as well. Morgan Fox as well, Poona Ford, and Mario Edwards. And then depth guys at edge for me, edge defensive tackle: Sebastian Joseph Day, Tier Tart, Raekwon Davis, and Roy Lopez to wrap up the defensive tackles. Moving on to linebacker. You see, this was a lot easier yesterday when I would actually break up the names a bit by talking about them. But when I'm naming so many names, I'm already bad with them, and I just feel like I'm being even worse with them. So I do apologise to all these names that I'm butchering. But anyway, as I was saying, linebacker, starter. This is up in the air. We don't really know what's going on with JOK. We still don't know if he's even going to play football again. So I do think they could look to add a starter level guy. For me, those guys would be Dre Greenlaw. Really, really good start to his career in San Francisco, but the injury and kind of bad players brought it down a little bit. I think you could get him on a reasonably priced deal, and as I kind of with some of the other guys I've mentioned, I think the upside there is really, really high. Robert Spillane I did have, but he signed with the Patriots about half an hour ago. And then Kaiser White as well. Rotational guys at linebacker, I've got Devin Bush. I mentioned in my Browns free agent videos, I would be interested in bringing him back. I think especially towards the end of the season, he had some pretty good performances, made some pretty good plays. I would be interested in bringing him back as a rotational guy. Sione Takitaki was released. Reunion, I would be interested in it. He was really good for the Browns when he was here. Definitely would be worth looking at as a rotational piece at linebacker. Tyrell Dodson, Malik Harrison, and then maybe Isaiah Simmons, maybe. And then depth pieces at linebacker, I've got Khaleke Hudson, one of the Browns free agents. You could look to bring him back. Devin White, I mean, he could be cooked, but for what probably wouldn't cost very much, and as a potential depth piece, you could go worse. Chris Board, Ben Neiman, and Jamin Davis to round off the linebackers. Cornerback is one of those that, on face value, you don't think is a need at all. They've got Denzel Ward, they've got Greg Newsome, they've got Martin Emerson. But I think maybe Greg Newsome could potentially be traded. It would have not shocked me at all. And, maybe they look to move on and get cheaper, so they want to get another young guy in there in the draft or something. I don't know. But I don't think it's quite as solidified that it's going to be those 3 guys next year. If you were to move on from Greg Newsome, 2 guys that I would have looked to, sign to replace him as a slot corner would have been Jonathan Jones and Jordan Lewis. But Jordan Lewis has signed with the Jaguars, so that would just leave Jonathan Jones. He is one of the better slot corners in the NFL, so it would probably cost you a decent amount. So I think the Browns probably get priced out of that. But if it was an option they were looking to spend money at and get rid of Newsome, that's someone that I would have looked to target. Rotational guys for me, Adoree Jackson, I think could bring really good experience into that room. Eric Stokes, Rocky Sin, and Isaac Yaudom. And then depth guys, Asante Samuel Jr., Jeff Okudah, former Buckeye, that's not the only reason, Kevin King, Nick McLeod, and Robert Rochelle are guys that I would look to target as depth pieces at cornerback. Last one, safety. I've spoken about this obviously all off season. I would rather draft a guy. I'm done with signing a free agent safety. The last 2 guys have not worked out, but they need a free safety. They really do. You can't rely on a rookie. So if you were to look to bring in a starter, for me, Xavier Woods, Justin Simmons, Justin Reed, Julian Blackman, or maybe if he's got anything left in the tank, Quandre Diggs. Rotational guys at safety, Marcus Epps, Jevon Holland, Marcus May, or again, if he's got anything left in the tank, Chuck Clark. And then depth guys, D'Anthony Bell, the obvious one. I think they look to bring him back. MJ Stewart, to maybe have a reunion with him. Israel Makumu and Jalen Mills. So they're the depth guys that I would look at safety. And that is all the guys. I've just listed so many names that I don't even know what words are anymore. But as I said, unfortunately, because I lost those files, I wasn't able to get the videos that I wanted to get out, where I did talk a little bit more, shall we say, about these guys. Not all of the depth guys. It wasn't a 2-hour video, but, gave a little bit more insight into it. But mistakes happen. We've got to move on from it. Just wanted to get these names out. Just wanted to give you an idea of what my targets were. What guys I was looking at, again, if that was either starter level, rotational, or depth pieces. Just wanted to get this video out. I'm going to stop rambling because I need to quickly edit this and upload it before half of these guys get signed. So that will do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I do apologise for this kind of rushed version of it, but hopefully it doesn't happen again, and I can promise it won't happen with any of the draft stuff, because I've made sure that I've freed up my time from work for that period. So that's one promise I can make. But as I said, that would do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free, but it really, really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and as I always say, even if I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing week. Enjoy free agency. Make sure you got your notifications on. But most importantly, go Browns.